everyone.
Morning.
Welcome to the Peer Recovery Support Services Community of Practice, our April meeting. My name is Melissa Schammel. I work at the Community Health Institute. We are located in Bow, New Hampshire, and out of the Community Health Institute is the New Hampshire Center for Excellence, which you might be aware of, provides technical assistance and training to providers across the continuum across the state. So today's topic is recovery housing and building this capacity in New Hampshire. And just so everyone's aware, we do have a few individuals on the phone. They'll be participating remotely today. We do like to have that as an option for people who can't come to Concord due to their schedules. Also, just to remind people who are on the phone to mute your lines if you aren't speaking so we don't get that feedback. We are recording the session today, and this will be posted on the Community of Practice resource page, which I will direct you to in just a minute. Thank you to the New Hampshire Training Institute for hosting us today. The bathrooms, if you haven't gone to them, are through that back door, out those glass doors, and then there's water and coffee and tea right outside here, so help yourself to that. So I introduced myself. My name is Melissa Schammel. I am a program project manager at the Community Health Institute, and I coordinate these meetings with a planning team from the Community Health Institute, so Adelaide Murray and Rekha Sridhara, and then also some other planning team members is Lindy Keller from the Bureau of Drug and Alcohol Services, Keith Howard from Hope for New Hampshire, Cheryl and Polly from the Harbor Homes Organization. We meet regularly after these meetings, do planning for these meetings, so they are it's a very active planning. So just to go over our agenda real quick, we are going to have an update from Lindy on the status of New Hampshire's recovery housing, and then we are going to have a presentation remotely, so bear with us if there's any tech issues. We did try to alleviate some of that yesterday, but you never know. Dave Sheridan from the National Alliance for Recovery Residences is going to be joining us all the way from California, I believe, to talk about that organization and what the NAR standards are. Then we will have Andrew West and Christine Paquette from the New Hampshire Coalition of Recovery Residents give us a local perspective of that coalition that falls under the NAR. And then there will be opportunity for question and answers with all of the speakers. So Lindy, Andrew, Christine, and Dave Sheridan. So we'll give 20 minutes for that. Hopefully that's enough time, and then we'll wrap up. In your packet, you'll notice you have an evaluation. If you please fill that out, we do take that into account in our planning meeting. So for our next meeting, we'll look at those and see what we can do better next time. So we can make this a valuable resource to the community. And also, if you are getting LADAC or CRSW credit, you'll need to fill that out and make sure that Adelaide checks your name off so we can get that certificate out to you as soon as possible. So just a brief background. I don't have too much time associated with this introduction. Basically, a community of practice brings together people who are passionate about a certain topic to communicate with each other regularly through in-person meetings, through a shared dialogue over the internet, and with the goal of gaining knowledge and sharing information. You guys have the experience, and it should be shared to kind of grow everyone in the community. So there's a few elements that make up a community of practice. So these in-person meetings, conference calls as needed, resources and tools, which I'll go over in just a minute for those who are newer to the community of practice, an email-based discussion group, which is our Google group, and technical assistance, which is provided through the Center for Excellence. So just a quick overview of our resources. There's a Peer Recovery Support Services Community of Practice webpage on the Center for Excellence page. So this has all of the previous recorded webinars, all the previous slides, from our past meetings and any relevant resources. So if you've missed anything in the past, please check that out. It's what we've done before. We have a Google group, which is an email-based discussion group that we would like you to participate in. I will be sending out a reminder to those who are in our email distribution list to sign up for this. Basically, it is an email group that we maintain that you can post resources to, ask questions, share any thoughts that you have around peer recovery support. So in our other communities of practice, specifically MAC, this has worked really well for that group, but it helps create a dialogue among people who are working across the state but that may not be able to connect regularly. And in your packet, we have a FAQ on Google Groups, so you can have a better understanding of what that resource is. And with Addie and I's contact information, if you have any questions. And again, the Center for Excellence provides technical assistance to the field, so please, if you have any questions or you're struggling through something and you think that you might be able to have some help from the Center for Excellence, we have an easy form to fill out that will kind of start the process, and we will reach out to you if you have any questions, any clarification that we might need regarding what you're asking for. And all technical assistance requests are approved by the Bureau, so it does take about 10 business days to kind of process those, but we would love to hear from you. So please reach out. If you do have questions about what is a technical assistance request, please contact me. So today's objective for the meeting is to describe recovery housing landscape in New Hampshire, to identify national recovery housing standards, to discuss the importance of identifying and implementing standards for recovery housing, and to identify local resources available to support recovery housing standards in New Hampshire. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Lindy to give us a little background.
Okay, good morning.
Good morning.
For those of you who don't know, my name is Lindy Teller. I work for the Bureau of Drug and Alcohol Services, and in my role there, one of the major areas that I help oversee is the peer recovery support services and all the other things that go along with that. So hence why I'm up speaking to you today. I'm just going to take a few minutes to kind of tell you where things are, because it's been very confusing for quite some time. First thing I'm going to say is it's still confusing, but we're getting closer. But I want to find out from you, how many of you are either owners or managers of a recovery house or are recovery house owner wannabes? Okay, that's good to know. And how many of you here are people who either work or volunteer in places where you think that you will have a role in referring people to recovery housing? Okay, good, because then we have the right audience. So what I want to say is that I think everybody knows that there is a huge need for good quality recovery housing in New Hampshire, and I think everybody also knows that we are slow in getting to that point. And so efforts are ongoing. Anytime this kind of work happens, there's a lot of steps that have to go, and a lot of them are bureaucratic, and that needs to be followed. So first thing that happened was in the last legislative session, there was legislation passed that required the state agency, that would be us, to establish a list of recovery houses in New Hampshire and publicize them, and also to develop a process for complaints. That legislation passed, but the way it was written, that it said that we needed to do that no sooner than, we thought it was no later than, but no sooner than June 30th of 2019. So that's why you've not seen anything about it, because it's not going to go into effect until then. I will say that we will have the regulations, the rules that have to be written, done by that time, and we will have a list. But that legislation, the way it was written, does not allow us to put any requirements on the houses on the list, nor to investigate any complaints. So, the whole idea was to have a list of safe, sober housing. And the reality is, the way the legislation was written, we can't put anything in place to make sure it's safe. We can only put together a list of houses that apply to us. So what I want to say about that is that we will have the list, it won't regulate it. So here's the first two messages. Number one is, please watch for information about that list, the rules, and the applications for getting on the list. Because if you do own housing, you want to be on it. The reason for that is that the legislation also states that no entity receiving any federal or state funding can refer people to any house that is not on the list. So, you want to be on the list. The second thing is that because it's just a list, we want those of you who are doing any referring to encourage people to ask questions when they contact the house, to look for a good fit for them, to visit the house before they give any money. Because it will not be a list of regulated houses. Okay? So for their safety and also for a good fit between the house and the person, encourage them to do that. And we do have a document that's on the Recovery Hub website, which is nhrecoveryhub.org, which is a list of kinds of questions that you might want to ask when you're pursuing recovery housing. So we encourage people to do that. So let me see. Yes, okay. So, but as a state agency, our goal is not just to have a list. Unfortunately, we found out that we were restricted with that. What we really want is we want to promote houses that meet acceptable standards so that we know that they are safe for people who are looking for that kind of housing. And the nice news is that there are excellent standards that the National Association for Recovery Residences, NAR, which you'll be hearing from soon, has developed in which many states are implementing. So that's a good thing. The second thing is, we have a state affiliate of those NAR, which is called New Hampshire Coalition for Recovery Residences, and that's NHCORE. You'll also be hearing from them today. So the direction we're moving is to try to help support NHCORE as they're moving forward to actually certify houses according to the national standards. Does that make sense? So by the end of today, you'll know a lot more about that. But that's really the state's goal, is to move in that direction. And as the one thing we can do with our unregulated list is as houses do get certified, we can actually note that on the list. So eventually what will happen is, yes, we'll still have this list of all these houses, but the ones who meet the standards will be highlighted, so people will know that. We basically say have been certified by national standards, or something along those lines. Let's see. The last thing I want to say is that there have also been a number of efforts to provide funding around this.
Right now, we can't edit recording.
There have been a number of efforts to provide funding around recovery housing. Because of the way funding has come into the state, that's not been a real coordinated effort. So there's a thing here and a thing there and a thing the other place. Eventually, we'd like to make that be a little bit more seamless, but in the meantime, I do want to say that there are some efforts on two fronts. On the one front is to help recovery housing with some capital improvements, certain things, not necessarily to buy property, but they may need to get to a place where they can be an appropriate house. And the second piece is on the renter side. to provide scholarships to people who are moving into recovery housing, and they need that first month's rent or that initial payment to get over the hump so they're in stable housing and can be employed and can then pay their own way moving forward. So what I would say is, because there's not a centralized plan around that right now, what we'll try to do is get information out about those efforts as that funding becomes available. And the three places to look for it would be on that recovery hub I mentioned, the nhrecoveryhub.org, on New Hampshire Corps' website, which they'll tell you about later. Also, you all, I hope, know about the doorway, or what still some people call the hub and spoke model, and the areas around the where people are going through. They have some sites as well. Their website is up, but it's getting improvements as we go along, and that's another place. And I believe that's the doorway at nh.gov. Is that correct? So for updated information, and then the last thing you do is get on that Google group that Melissa just told you about, because that's another place where we can push information like this through. So I would just say, do your best to try to stay informed as we move forward. I think we're moving in the right direction. This is a whole lot better than where we were a year ago. And so I appreciate everything that you all are doing. I really appreciate those of you who are pioneers in the recovery housing and are out there and actually doing this while it's so confusing, and hopefully we'll make things easier for you. And most importantly, what we'll do is we'll have a system of houses in here that can help keep people safe as they embark on their path of recovery and move back into the community and move forward, and that will be supportive and not barriers. That's what I have to say, and now I'm going to just move straight into getting you to the NAR information by introducing you to Dave Sheridan. He is one of the co-founders of the National Alliance for Recovery Residences, and currently he serves as the president of NAR, so it may be a virtual event here, but at the same time we are getting like the experts speaking to us. He's been active in the recovery field for 15 years, and he has served on the board of directors of a Southern California recovery housing support organization. Some of the things that he offers are technical assistance. He also works with state addiction agencies to help establish statewide recovery housing certification support systems. So exactly what it is that we are looking for. He is an advocate, and he's also a resource on fair housing issues. And in recent years, that's included really looking at the development of state recovery housing oversight and supporting legislation to support that. He's a national speaker and writer on addiction recovery topics, and has a great deal of other experience, but we're going to just let him share his knowledge with us as soon as Melissa gets the technology working right. So, Dave, we will get you up here in just a minute.
I was trying to hide all the callers, and now I can't. Hi, Dave.
Can you hear me? Hi.
Let's turn you up.
We're going to turn your volume up. Thank you.
Can everybody see my slide? I can't see what you're seeing.
Yeah, Dave, we can see your slide.
All right. Well, thank you. Good morning, everybody, and thanks, Lindy. My name is Dave Sheridan, and I think that was a really kind introduction. We're going to go through a few things in this hour, including a bit about what recovery housing is, what NAR is, who NAR is, how we work, and a little bit of how our state affiliates function, although you'll be hearing a little bit about that in the presentation after mine.
Dave, sorry to cut
Yes.
you off. We can see your slides in presenter mode. You want to have it?
Well, that's not right. Hold on. That's not what we want to do. Let me see here. I've got two screens going. And
So now we can see your PowerPoint like in edit mode.
yeah, oh, you can? Okay.
Yeah. So you just need to put it in.
Let's see if, now what do you see? Back in presenter mode?
Yeah.
Oh, this is weird. Let's see what I can do here. I can make it a little bigger this way.
That works if you don't need your notes.
I don't.
Does that work? And everyone also has the slides in their in their handout.
All right. Yeah, I don't need my notes. So I thought we'd start off with, cutting through a lot of the clutter about what the resource is. And across all of the different modalities, service delivery models, types of services, recovery housing boils down to a few basics. It's shared housing for individuals with substance use disorders. It's abstinence-based. It relies for the benefits it delivers on a peer recovery support model, and it operates like a family-like community. So it's more than just housing, and that's sort of best summarized this way. And one of the reasons historically that a lot of people get a bit confused about what recovery residences and recovery housing are, it really sits at the intersection of housing and recovery support services. Both are essential. It isn't just a place where people sleep in order to receive services as they would at a hospital or a treatment facility. But it's not a boarding and rooming house either. It functions as a private household. We'll go into a little bit of the detail of the different models and what we call levels. But the way we view recovery residences is primarily how they fit into the continuum of recovery. So if we think about a timeline for an individual who's entering recovery, where across the bottom you have time, and somebody enters recovery on the left, and typically they enter and need and receive a high level of services for a very short amount of time. And this is what we call acute and subacute care. This is emergency rooms, detoxes, hospitalization, residential treatment, psychiatric. But this is what we think of as the residential component, the detox component. But you'll look at how much of that curve, how much time somebody's going to spend on their recovery journey that's outside of that. And over that time, people are going to consume and receive a whole lot of different kinds of services, whether it's outpatient treatment or some services in a community center, one-on-one therapy, family reconciliation, job readiness, whole lot of different services out in the community that they're going to need to get their lives back on track. And then these are the housing components that support that. That if somebody leaves an acute care environment, a subacute care environment, and they return to a community and don't have a safe environment in which to begin their recovery journey, it's no surprise that results are not terribly good. But good recovery housing doesn't just happen. It's based on standards and ethics and the national best practices that we've helped define. There's provider accountability that's involved, that there's somebody outside the provider that is ensuring that they're being held to those standards. Coupled with that is consumer information and protections. As Lindy was saying, we want people to know about the good homes. And so one of the incentives to meet and maintain accountability to the standards is that there's some public means for people to find out about the good homes, and that there's also a public means for people to register complaints, whether they're residents or members of the community or people in the professional community. If there's a complaint about an operator or a residence, there needs to be a way that people know that they can register those complaints. Another huge component is provider support and continuing quality improvement. And that includes training, workforce development, and ultimately once, these residences, once they're operating, historically have been pretty siloed. And so another real goal of excellent recovery housing is integration into your larger systems of care. Making sure that residents have access to the other things they need, healthcare and social services and otherwise. And that the housing is more than just the standalone providers. There's also the local expertise and policy resource that our statewide affiliates provide, in your case, NHCOR. Just wanted to give you a little bit of background about us. We're not terribly old. We were founded in 2011 by people that had been active in regional recovery housing organizations or somehow or other had some expertise in recovery housing and an interest in seeing a national organization assume the role that we've taken on. We developed our first standard and code of ethics back in 2012. We've developed a certification program that's now being implemented by our state organizations. We cover the full spectrum of recovery housing, which I'm going to get into in a minute. We've also developed an operating model for statewide recovery housing support systems, and New Hampshire is one of the most recent states to adopt it. Others include Florida, Massachusetts, Indiana, last year Pennsylvania, and Rhode Island. We have affiliate relationships in 30 states and a few more in the works. And we offer a variety of training and technical assistance, and we have working relationships with several government agencies. This is what we look like today. The green states are where we've got an affiliate relationship, and the blue states are where we're developing new affiliates. And of course, New Hampshire has been an affiliate now for, I think, a couple of years. And there you are. And the way we work is that NAR is really an information conduit. And our main role day to day is to support our state affiliates. And these just happen to be three that we use for this chart. But that they're front and center in the relationships that operators have. Operators become part of our affiliates, and they don't join NAR. And they're supported by and overseen by the affiliates. This is the way it really works. I mentioned we're really kind of a knowledge exchange. These are the operators affiliate with their state organization, who has an affiliate relationship with NAR, and then they and we together develop and maintain that body of knowledge, the best practices, and cycle that back to the providers. And that's an ongoing cycle. So the affiliates, like NHCOR, are really more than just licensees. They're actually part of this whole national system of improving practices. I mentioned a few minutes ago that we've developed a model for state support, and the National Council for Behavioral Health, and we released this document last year and introduced it at the national conference that all of the state addiction agencies attend every year. And it's been a really good blueprint, including legislative guidance that some states and state addiction agencies like Lindy's agency are, have taken to heart. And the elements of a good state system support are, that recognition of standards and the certification of residences, which is that formal process for assessing a residence against a standard. Creating some kind of incentives for becoming standards compliant. And the other thing that is recently become an issue in states including Florida and here in California are incidents of patient brokering, insurance fraud, misleading advertising. One of the nice things about having a certification program is it gives operators a stake in staying away from those practices, because now they have something to lose. That if they run afoul of either existing state or federal law or the NAR ethics code, then they lose their certification and whatever privileges that conveys in a particular state. The other good, and Lindy mentioned this a bit, essential to a really vibrant system of recovery housing are funding and there's different kinds of funding that are important. One is resident access and services. How do you fund that first month, that first couple of months of resident fees to give people access, to get them back on their feet, to maybe where they can be working and self-sufficient, and stay on in the residence by paying their own fees. And then there's the cost for system expansion and system support, which are those certification functions, training, and all of the things that go to supporting that community of providers. Now, moving on to standards, we're on our third version of standards. Our first one we introduced in 2012, and the most current one just came out in November. It's not much changed from the one we had 2 years ago, but it's changed a little bit in emphasis, and we're going to talk about that. But before we get into what's in the standard, what is it that a national standard offers? Well, first, it's a basis for building trust and community acceptance. Right now in most states, consumers, local government officials, families don't have any way to assess independently whether or not a provider or a residence is really offering a good service. The other thing it offers is a standard nomenclature, and that's important in a lot of different contexts, including trying to help people determine what type of recovery residence they need to be in. There's a lot of different branding and descriptive information about residences, and it varies from place to place. So it provides some standardization. And as that circle graph showed you, it also unites the fragmented knowledge base. We got together and found out that there's a lot of wisdom in all different parts of the country, but we needed a way to bring it together, and the discussion of a national standard was the way we started doing that. And through that, we've got the means now that we can collect and promote best practices through a network of state organizations with a knowledge exchange at the center. The other thing about a standard is it's a blueprint to new and better capacity. When states are looking to expand or enhance their services, once you've got a standard in place, you've got a handle on the kinds of services that could be offered. And that helps when either they're private sector providers or nonprofits or through other efforts, you're trying to actually bring capacity to places that doesn't exist. It also equips researchers with comparable subjects. A lot of the early work in recovery housing in terms of research on outcomes and population served was done on Oxford houses. And one of the main reasons is because it was a well-defined resource through the standards of operation that they had developed, that researchers knew what they were looking at when they looked at an Oxford house. And finally, a standard's a basis for a certification program. A good standard will define essential requirements and might reference nice to do or nice to have requirements, but the main focus is on what is essential to operate a recovery residence. Good standards are evidence-based. In our case, they're based on operator experience dating back decades. You know, they're objective and measurable, meaning one of the elements of our standard, there's an objective way to assess a residence to determine whether it does or doesn't meet the rule. The other thing that's really important, especially when you're thinking about states' capacity, is that a standard needs to be value-free. A lot of the early recovery housing is based on 12-step models or faith-based models. We're seeing a little hybridization now. But the idea of a standard is it doesn't prescribe a recovery philosophy or a recovery pathway. That a standard ought to be supportive of a wide variety of pathways to recovery and not really just a single pathway. The other thing, and this gets to, it's a little bit like the first point, it's achievable by conscientious providers, meaning that it doesn't impose undue cost barriers so that a low-cost operator, no matter how hard they're willing to work to meet standards, they're just too costly. The record keeping or the physical plant requirements are such that you just can't meet them and still offer a bed that's accessible to somebody on a minimum wage job. And finally, it has to be one that's accepted by health professionals. It's great to have a standard, but unless people accept that this is a valid standard, it doesn't really help anybody. So having developed the principles of what we wanted to do, we had to come up with a common terminology. And what we really knew was the case because of our state organizations that we've been working in, is there's a huge variety of the kinds of services that people offer and combinations of services, and a lot of different recovery pathways and recovery philosophies. So a common terminology was something we needed to wrestle with in order to share information among ourselves first about what was out there, what is it that we were seeing. And this is really the first set of discussions that led us to understand that we had to wrestle with terminology. We knew there was such a thing as a recovery house, and what we began seeing was this. That people would come into our discussions and bring terms with them that maybe didn't mean much to anybody else in the discussion or meant something different, and particularly halfway house. So one of the reasons for recovery residence was not to do any kind of clever branding, but was to standardize on some terminology that wouldn't create confusion among existing things that were out there. Now, the other thing we observed was that in this wide variety of service levels, we really needed to be able to describe what that world looked like to the public and to operators in aggregated terms. And so what we came up with was a series of levels. And these are based on the type and intensity of services that are typically provided. And broken down into categories all levels of residence, any recovery residence, is an alcohol and drug-free living environment. And they are all have as their basis the social model of recovery. Regardless of level, even in environments that might offer some clinical services, the underlying definition almost of a recovery residence is that social model ethos. Then recovery support services in a formal sense begin to be added in our level 2s, which might be assisting residents with personal recovery plans. And level 3 adds more formal programming where you might have scheduled groups and one-on-one activities with some credentialed staff. And then level 4 adds clinical services, and in most states this enters into the realm of licensed residential treatment. Level 1 is a pure peer model, and most common exemplar of level 1 is Oxford House. Level 2 in a lot of places is called a sober home or a sober living home. Level 3, there's really no single term that states use or people use. And level 4, just described as treatment. In level 1, this is where leadership is elected by the residents. The residents themselves set and enforce rules. The residents interview applicants and make acceptance decisions. And they're usually responsible for all the expense and upkeep of the residents, just like a family that was leasing a home from a landlord would be responsible for. In Oxford House's case, there's some external oversight in their outreach workers, but the focus is really on the individual residents and their ability to set and maintain their own rules. Level 2 adds a notion of a house manager and an operator. In level 2 residence, you typically have rules that are set by an entity that's other than the residents, but certainly it needs to include the residents in terms of input and consent. The provider selects and supervises the management and leadership, but the leadership is generally peer leadership. Almost always it's somebody who had part of the recovery journey in that residence and maybe just in the immediate past. They may get promoted to house manager when a current house manager moves on with their life. And as in level 1, the residents pitch in and take care of normal upkeep, keeping the place clean, the lawn mowed. The property owner or the operator is responsible for major repairs. Level 3 takes that level 2 model where you still have the idea that there's an operator, a provider, and adds some programmatic services including life skills, possibly some one-on-one resident services. And in this case, the staffing might include addiction counselors, might include some other, exercise people. Yoga classes are pretty common, but it stops short of presenting itself as offering clinical services. And level 4 can include all of the life skills sorts of things that level 3s do. They typically offer more in terms of hours per week of programming. They now have possibly licensed staff in addition to merely credentialed, and in most states, it's licensed as residential treatment. I should note here that not all residential treatment programs think of themselves as recovery residences or even want NAR certification. They're more firmly based on the clinical model, and the recovery residence designation might not mean much to them. We offer it because a lot of places with long social model history and experience value it, and it's available. But because most of these places in most states are licensed, there's not a whole lot of interest in states where the licensure is really the thing that keeps you in business. Now, one of the reasons we did this and define levels is that they exist for different reasons. So a couple of the things that would indicate an individual's need for a higher level of support would be that they need specific programmatic services that are offered at a residence. Or they've got a moderate to high extent of co-occurring disorders where they really need just more support and possibly for a longer period of time. So where someone enters could be any level, but often informed by their unique needs and should be. Things that will tend to suggest somebody might enter at a lower level or move from one level to a lower numbered level would be as they begin gaining recovery experience and recovery capital and making progress in their recovery. And unfortunately, of course, there's also demands of outside life. They may have to move to a lower level of support in order to either get back into the workforce or have family obligations or simply economics, that the lower levels certainly cost less per month than the higher levels. So there's some economic reality there. Well, the standards are divided into 4 major sections. Excuse me for a second, my throat's getting a little dry. The first is administrative, and we'll go through what's in these. That's the basic operations, paperwork, what residents see, how the place operates administratively. The second is the physical environment. The third is recovery support services. And we have a separate category because they're a little bit unique for good neighbor requirements. So all in all, there's 31 elements in the standard, and they're divided into these 4 domains, roughly 100 individual indicators. So we won't have time to go through any of those today, but you can access our standard anytime from our website, which is naronline.org. Separate from the standard is a code of ethics, and it's consistent with the current standards but was written prior to that. What's new in version 3 is that we want to see evidence that the residents and everybody that has resident contact that works in the residence as a staff or a volunteer knows and understands that this code of ethics is binding on them, and that the residence operator is responsible that everybody is adhering to the code of ethics. It's got 20 ethical rules. It's also consistent with other ethical codes. We crosswalked it with various counselor, social worker codes of ethics, and I haven't found, and nobody has found yet, any conflicts between the kinds of ethical requirements that we have and anything else that might be binding on an individual. Recently, we released a companion guide, and this is worth taking a look at as NH Core gets started and the certification process takes off. It gives a little bit of the history of the development of the standard. It also explains the evidence base. You know, where do these rules come from? Why are they there? And what incremental value do they add to the recovery process? There's a little bit about effective implementation, and also a lot of citations if you want to learn more about outcomes that are associated with various attributes of residences. That's in here as well. That's available on our website. So going into the standard, just a bit of detail. In our administrative level, the real guiding principles are that the residents operate with integrity, uphold residents' rights, create a culture of empowerment, and develop staff skills. So the rules in here are things like full disclosure of financial obligations before an applicant for residency signs anything or hands over any money. That they know exactly the terms, the financial terms, the house rules, any requirements that are going to be placed on them during their stay, that is all fully disclosed and discussed. That they also know that they have certain rights, that the residence is going to ensure that certain things are protected, like their privacy, their dignity, and their right to make complaints. So the residence has to be able to demonstrate that everybody in the house knows that if something goes wrong, there's a place outside the house to complain. There's also things in here that create a culture of empowerment. The ways that a residence helps residents understand that they are part of each other's recovery experience. And we're going to go through that in a little more detail. And some requirements about staff skill development. The physical environment, the key principles are that it be home-like and that it be safe and healthy. So this is where the rules about capacity and overcrowding, how many people can share a refrigerator or a bedroom, and basic health and safety things. Also things that make the place home-like in the sense that the furnishings can't be institutional. If someone walks in the door, they want to be able to feel that they're home and they're not at the rehab. A lot of little things go into that, and that's part of the training. The other things that go into physical environment are, does the residence provide enough common area for people to mingle and interact with each other informally? Is there a room big enough that the whole household can get together for example, the weekly house meeting? A lot of requirements like that. Recovery support is a huge part of the standard, and this is where that social model comes in, and we're going to talk a little bit about that specifically. But a lot of conscious activity has to go into the planning and maintenance of that recovery environment. It's a bit like a Broadway theater, that maintaining the stage and the lighting and the ticket takers and the box office, and making sure that the stage is set for the residents to be able to interact with each other and be part of each other's recovery. Good neighbor policies include going above and beyond what's really legally required. We expect residences to proactively do things like smoking policies that aren't going to bother the neighbors, parking policies, noise rules, and that they need to be affirmatively engaged in good neighbor behaviors as a household, and also to help the residents understand that learning to live in harmony with your next door neighbors and the people across the street is just part of becoming an adult. That this is just healthy reintegration into neighborhoods and into life. Another thing that's really important, especially for people looking at what housing is appropriate for someone and what standards might apply, is that our standards are level specific. So in the documentation, there's 4 columns over to the right of the description of the rules that indicate which level of residence that particular rule applies to. And this is important because the levels are enough different that we wanted to make sure that rules that made sense in a clinical environment or something where you've got staffing don't become overly burdensome in an environment like a level 1 or a level 2 where you don't. This has come up recently just about everywhere. There's a lot of concern and contention around medication-assisted treatment, medication-assisted recovery. We just developed this with the National Council for Behavioral Health and the Center for Social Innovation. And it's really a best practices guide for residence operators about how to best integrate individuals who are receiving one of the medications for opioid use disorder into the recovery residence environment. And the goal isn't just to be accepting of medications, but to actually become what we call MAT capable. And what that means is helping an individual with unique challenges that they're going to face taking medications. For example, finding local meetings and recovery activities that aren't stigmatizing, and making sure that the diversion risks are addressed, and that stigmatizing within the house is addressed, and that residents who aren't on medications can grow to accept the differences in paths that we all choose and the things that different people need on their recovery journeys. And we like the term medication-assisted recovery because our belief is that medications are one of several things that are needed. If we think about the three-legged stool, if you need medications, you need therapy, and you need recovery, that medication plus recovery is what people will be getting in a recovery residence if they're coming in with medication. All right. Looks like I'm just about on schedule. I was doing a quick time check there. Talked a little bit in the standards section about the social model and resident interaction, and I think it's worth spending a little extra time on that. This group sounds, since you're the learning collective for peer recovery services, this is old news to most of you. But the clinical model really kind of looks like this, that you have a trained professional helping someone new in recovery understand the principles of recovery and what they're going to need to do to address their condition. This is what the social model looks like. The relationship arrows are horizontal instead of vertical. And the emphasis is on shared recovery experience, individual experienced recovery as the basis for authority, emphasis on experiential knowledge, and that the recovery really operates as via connections between residents. And because of this, because of these attributes, residents aren't necessarily going to enter the recovery residence understanding these things. In fact, they're probably not. And it's important that these are inculcated in new residents as part of the program or house rules and what the staff knows. So involvement in shared recovery activities are another important thing. So several of the rules reference opportunities for residents to engage in activities both inside and outside the home, opportunities to help plan activities, and then, of course, abstinence enforcement is crucial to this, and also that substance use disorder is centered in the reciprocal relationship between the individual and his or her surrounding social unit. And that's one of the reasons for things like drug testing, that the maintenance of that solidarity and that reciprocal relationship requires that everybody have that shared purpose, that we're all in this lifeboat together, and we've got to do some things to protect the integrity of our lifeboat. And our social unit are the people we're here in recovery with, and soon people in the local recovery community. Another thing we look at as a set of goals for both operators and, of course, residents is the accumulation of social capital. And this is based partly on the idea that recovery is more than just abstinence. This is SAMHSA's working definition of recovery. It summarizes health, home, purpose, and community. That people are acquiring things in their lives that address these aspects of the things humans need. And another way to think about recovery capital is in terms of where I am now versus where I want to go, and assessing what do I have in my life right now that's going to help me get there, and what do I need to bring into my life that's going to help me get there that I don't currently possess. And so what recovery capital really is are those things that I either have or have access to that are going to help me in my recovery and to help me achieve my goals. And the resources include a lot of things. I've got a list coming up. And one of the things that recovery capital helps residents do, and some of our residences actually facilitate this, is a formal process of identifying what do I have going for me, what do I need to have going for me in order to fulfill my goals. And that's where personal recovery planning comes in. These are types of recovery capital. I think a lot of you in the room are familiar with the kinds of things that get classified as recovery capital. General health, mental, emotional well-being, financial resources, the education that someone comes into recovery with or will need to acquire when they're in recovery. On the social side, a lot of people's social networks are pretty badly frayed when they come into recovery. But we look at things like family support. Do they have a significant other in their life? What kind of social mobility do they have? How familiar are they with the dominant culture? Do they have a healthy lifestyle? And do they have access to health care? And the last one on the social capital list is safety. And it's one of the big things that feeling of safety that a recovery residence provides is, it's intangible, but it's pretty important, because if people don't feel safe, there's a lot of things that they can't really progress to. And don't have time to spend on this very much, but the other dimension that recovery residents exist in is sort of the same kind of world that peer recovery support services fit in. And that's the idea of recovery-oriented systems of care. That for a long, long time, we've focused on recovery as being something that's more or less linear and focused on programs and buildings where what we really want to do is focus on the individual and not the program or the bricks and mortar. So all of these things in the circle feed to an individual's improving their condition. Obviously treatment and rehab, but then peer support and housing are sort of the treatment recovery pieces. But they're just part of a whole bunch of things that people need to access in order to really be whole. Well, that's a little bit about the rules. I've got a few minutes. I want to go over the certification process just at a high level. It's a third-party evaluation of a residence relative to NAR standards. It's an annual process which can be attenuated for residences that are renewing that haven't had a history of complaints. There are some things that don't have to be redone every year. There's public recognition of the certified status of a residence, and that residences that have achieved certification can advertise that. They can use NH cores or NAR logos. They can appear on websites and directories as being certified. And the process sort of has four pieces. There's a formal application process, which is really background information about the provider, about the residents, contact information, and that sort of thing. And the first part of the assessment is a review of documents, and that's documents that the resident sees, its policies and procedures, its marketing materials, because one of the things we care about is truth in advertising, that there's no misrepresentation of what's offered or the cost of service. We want to see proof of adequate insurance. And then there's some affidavits that if someone, for example, is leasing their property, that they have the property owner's permission to be operating a residence there. The second piece is a set of structured interviews. And this is where the certification staff is going to try to assess how much of those recovery support services, how are they actually delivered? Does the staff of the residents really understand their roles? Are they really executing the kinds of things they're supposed to be doing? How are the house meetings run? How are assessment interviews conducted? And then, of course, the final thing that everybody thinks of is the home inspection or the site visit. And this is to assess the health and safety requirements, property condition, and a few other items that are in the standards that are things like you have to have some sort of a bookkeeping or accounting system. We want to see how you do abstinence verification. You know, if you do drug testing, show us how you do that. Where do you store your kits? A lot of things that dovetail into other things besides just the physical environment. And the idea of the certification process is it's more than just inspections. It's not just grading. It actually combines reviews with technical assistance. In almost all cases, for a new operator or somebody that hasn't been through the certification process, it's going to turn up some deficiencies. And so the idea is, how do you turn those deficiencies around and help a willing operator improve by addressing those? So the consultative part of the certification process is really important. And that's where the role of our local affiliate comes in, because unlike a third-party assessment, like a building inspector, their job is really to help bring people up and not just grade them as pass-fail. And there's specialized training that goes along with that. The other thing about the certification and related processes is this idea of accountability. That there's a process, a formal process, for third-party investigation of complaints. This would be administered by NH Core. The state addiction agency typically has some oversight over that and wants to ensure that complaints are being addressed fairly and promptly, and that those mechanisms are in place, records are being kept, and that the focuses are really on solutions and remediation, just like the certification process. If there's a complaint, what do we need to do to make it right? And it's pretty obvious this is essential to maintaining public trust. People need to know that there's a resource they can go to that, at least for residences that are expected to be certified and maintain certification, that those complaints can be addressed. And one of the things we like to point out to providers is that even though this sounds kind of onerous and time-consuming, there's a lot in it for them. Because building trust is something that most operators can't do on their own. It's really hard to manufacture your own credibility. Very few providers can really do that on the basis of their years of service or the volume of glowing reviews they have, because It's just not how this marketplace works. It provides recognition for that superior operation. You're going to go through a lot of time and effort to maintain certification, but you're going to get recognized for it. And in some places, depending on state laws and administrative regs, it will provide eligibility for referrals and funding. It also gives you the basis for quality improvement. Unless you have some kind of a yardstick, it's just hard to know where you're meeting the marketplace's needs and also where the field is. Those 100-odd rules are good examples of specific areas where you can focus on that you need to work on, and places where you're at or better than industry norms. It also, we know from experience in states that have been around for a few decades, like Georgia and California, that places that operate according to standards make for happier residents. And, of course, it's independent evidence of meeting the criteria for fair housing protection. A lot of places that masquerade as recovery housing and really aren't occasionally have difficulty demonstrating things like that they serve people with disabilities and that particular housing is necessary for individuals with those disabilities to address their disabilities, that it's not just a place to live, and that it's housing as opposed to some other kind of service. I'm going to leave you with one example of another thing that when we think about what recovery housing does and really what peer recovery services in general do and the recovery community does. If we think about somebody new to recovery as the equivalent of an immigrant to this country, that they're coming out of a culture of addiction and a culture of estrangement, and now all of a sudden they're in a new place. They're viewed by mainstream society as an other, as a less than, as a not us. They've certainly come into recovery and into the recovery community and into recovery residence with some unique needs that our next door neighbors don't have. And that a lot of the goals that they're going to be able to achieve are going to be best achieved through mutual assistance. Just like a lot of successful immigrant communities to America, that's typically been the model, is that a new immigrant is best helped by somebody who's been through that new immigrant experience and share some bonds with that new person. And that specific services are best provided, like peer support services, from people who identify as being part of that community. The individuals need to transition from that old culture to the new culture, that culture of addiction to the culture of recovery. Sort of like the transitioning from the culture of County Cork to the culture of Vail, Iowa, which is the case of my maternal grandfather. And really, along the way, the need to feel welcome, accepted, and encouraged. And what better place to do that than in a home, surrounded by people that are there for the same reasons and have been through what the new individual is going to go through. If you want more information about NAR or recovery housing or anything we talked about today, you can meet us in St. Louis this year. We're going to be at downtown next to the ballpark, October 14th through 16th, at our 6th annual Best Practices Summit. And this is where you can find more information. And that concludes my part of the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dave. We really appreciate you presenting. It's kind of a different format, not being able to see the room. So we really appreciate everyone. And Dave, thank you so much for all the information. I'm going to invite Christine and Andrew from NH Core up to talk about the local affiliate, and then we'll have questions, plenty of questions.
I just have a question. How much is the certification process?
How much does it cost?
Yes.
Dave, how much does the certification process
Done
cost
by the
for
affiliate.
residents?
So,
Okay.
I think Paul collapsed the next presentation.
You mean how much will it actually cost to conduct it, including the record keeping and everything else? Ohio figures it's the total cost to actually do it is between $600 and $800 a year. None of our affiliates charges that much to a typical, say, 10, 12-bed residence. But that's about what it costs when you think about the cost of performing the certification functions, delivering training, managing a website in a resource list, and a lot of the advocacy and information functions that go on. Ohio's got the best numbers, and that's where they think where they are right now.
Thank you, Dave. Yeah, so we'll have plenty of time for questions after Christine and Andrew have time to talk.
I'm actually going to stand here, if you guys don't mind, because I have crutches and I don't want to crutch up there. I'm so happy to see everybody here today. This is super exciting for us. So I'm going to just tell you real quick, Dave, thank you so much for making my job easier, because going through all those slides is a lot of talking. But a little bit about me. I'm Christine Paquette. I own the Homestead in Recovery Hospital in New Hampshire. I've been around for 6.5, 7 years now. And when I first started, I was a nurse. I worked in acute care. So when I first started at sober house, I couldn't figure out. There's no policy, there's no laws, there's no rules, which was great and not at the same time, because it also created a lot of mistakes. So you have to kind of learn as you go. And I actually got in touch with NAR way back then. At the time, had just started, and we were very small. I think there was 2 of us, myself and Andrew, and Eric Spofford, that were around at that time. So it was very small. There was really not housing. So they didn't feel that there was, enough investment or to have a whole affiliate up here. So I've been working on this for many years. About 2 years ago, we actually applied, got the affiliate, got their attention, finally got them up here because we were having such a need for so, the biggest thing is you have a whole group of people help you out through this process. So if you decide you want to open good quality recovery housing, or you want to be a recovery advocate, you become a member of NAPOR. Membership is attached to each individual person. So anybody can be a member of it. But the houses, once they're certified, they will be a certified membership. And we did that so that we could maintain much of the recovery community, getting as much input from everybody in the recovery community is usually the easiest way to kind of make things work and go as smoothly as possible. So that's how it all got started. And now, we've just continued our certification process. We've got math up around. Kathleen has been working diligently. And we're average now. I think I'm going to let Andrew and Kathleen finish up on the rest of that. And of course, when you guys, when we're done, certainly. Thank you.
Thanks, Christine. Hey, everybody. My name's Andrew West. I'm with NH Core. I'm just going to stand over here at the podium. I have some notes here. Dave, thank you very much. That was fantastic. So, just to reiterate, I wanted to read, Kathleen was very generous in printing out what we are actually certifying is that homes are adopting and running with that social model that was so well presented this morning, and if you'll bear with me, I'm going to read it. So the New Hampshire Coalition of Recovery Residences, NHCORE, as the state affiliate of the National Alliance for Recovery Residences, NAR, as Dave Sheridan just spoke, certifies recovery homes that meet national quality standards for safety, recovery support, and ethical operation focused on resident well-being, which is most important, people that we serve. NHCORE certification signifies that a home practices the social model philosophy, and again, can't drive this point home enough today with everyone. Social model homes reinforce the explicit understanding that together, residents learn to live productive lives while building the interdependent peer relationships so vital to sustaining recovery from active addiction and alcoholism. So folks who are living with a substance use disorder, as we've seen, many of us in here are in recovery. I would argue that everyone in here is an advocate for those who are in recovery. You know, the traditional sort of acute care level detox, transitioning to a 30-day inpatient, and then people sort of supposing to go back and into the real world, it's not realistic. And one of the things that I've argued for years is that good quality recovery housing is the best bang for the buck. So people get out, and all these other, we have some fantastic recovery community organizations throughout the state of New Hampshire now, which are delivering peer-based services to folks, helping folks get back to work, find job training. The economic component of this entire epidemic, where people need to really feel a sense of hope, is something delivered through good quality recovery housing in that social model. So social model recovery homes promote connection and fellowship. We all know that loneliness and isolation contribute to relapse or reoccurrence, right? The opposite of addiction, the opposite of substance use disorder is really connection, people feeling a part of. We know how easy it is nowadays to isolate, whether it's a device or a cell phone, or so really re-engaging folks and getting them back into the community is the most important part of this. Housemates hold each other accountable for the actions, choices, and participations that demonstrate a commitment to recovery. This bonded connection between residents and the shared responsibility for the home's health and harmony. This is important. Distinguish social model homes from alcohol and drug-free rooming, lodging, or boarding houses, institutions, or facilities. So again, effectively you have a group of folks in recovery living and functioning together as a family unit. Very, very important. Social model recovery residences encourage the recovery to be a part of rather than apart from the community. Social model recovery homes operate as the functional equivalent of a family. Residents live together for mutual support as a family unit under a common housekeeping management plan that promotes fellowship, stability, and sustained recovery from substance use disorder. That concept of mutual assistance, that's very important. Now, there are different levels in New Hampshire. We're currently working in terms of certification on having 4 levels in the state of New Hampshire. And level 1 and 2 are fairly black and white, I would argue. 3 and 4 are a little, they're a little more granular, and we'll be able to speak to that more in the coming weeks. And again, the definition is dense because we want operators, residents, families of residents, and professionals to have a clear understanding of what it means to be a recovery home rather than an institution. And this is important as well. Residents of recovery homes do not represent a transient population. Many residents put down community roots in a recovery home, and their residency is of unlimited duration. And this is important because there can be a spiritual component to recovery homes. So when a home's approach is based on the 12 steps, it does not have to be, but it can. Residents live together for mutual spiritual support. And at the end of the day, we know life is hard. We know that people in recovery should be able to come home and know that they're not going to find a bong on the coffee table or alcohol in the refrigerator. And recovery homes provide safe haven for that. So, and as Christine just mentioned, Membership is attached to the person. This is actually very unique to NH Core versus many of the other NAR affiliates. Membership in NH Core is attached to the person. Certification is attached to the house. Did I get that right? All right. That's very important, and it's actually a fantastic opportunity for a number of folks who are not operators or necessarily associated with a particular program or recovery residence to have a say and become a member of NH Core, which is really really cool. That will start June 1st, and I'm going to be quiet in just a second here, and we're going to open it up for questions. But we have a program that has agreed to be, or a house, I should say, that has agreed to be our first, our guinea pigs, basically, our guinea pig for certification, and that has that will be starting in the coming weeks. June 1, we will be officially rolling out certification. We're on track in terms of deliverables. And for folks that are here who are operators or work in recovery housing, one of the most important things is that, you know, regardless of the philosophy or maybe the modality that is in the home, we want to encourage you. There's no set way. Some of, you know, Massachusetts is very sort of black and white in what recovery homes look like. Some other states. This is going to open it up for a number of different philosophies, so whether it's abstinence-based, faith-based, you know, medically assisted recovery, everybody's welcome, and we hope that that's really going to encourage and drive the marketplace for good quality ethical recovery housing in the state of New Hampshire. And because we're such a small state, we've already seen incredible traction in the last year or so, where we're really going to have the opportunity in the coming months and years to take the lead on this. And we have some fantastic stakeholders that are in this room. I'm so pleased to see all of you here today. So I think with that, do we have time for questions?
Yes.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Holly Morris, and I work for Harbor Home, a facilitating organization for the peer recovery support service organizations around the state. There are 11, currently 11, soon to be 13, and then hopefully here they have a couple of recovery centers too. So as Dave said, you know, the intersection of housing with the peer recovery support services, there should be a recovery center near all of you. So if you haven't connected with them and you'd like to, you can tell you myself afterwards. I've got business cards for my colleague Cheryl and Alyssa in the back, and you can find out where the recovery support center is near you to intersect with them and find out what they offer to go along with their house. And then the referral process too, you know, so everybody knows it already. Thank you all for your presentation today.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you. Before any more questions or announcements, I'm going to try to get a microphone going so that Dave can respond to questions and hear them. So I'm fingers crossed that everyone doesn't get their ears blown out right now. Can everyone on the phone hear? Okay?
You guys hear on the phone? Okay?
Great. Great.
Yep. Couldn't hear Christine very well.
Oh, yeah.
Xander came through.
She was far away. Opening up for questions for Andrew and Dave and just the room.
Thank you. My name is Brad Foltz with the Addiction Recovery Coalition in New Hampshire. My question is for Lindy. After 30 June, what is the
process? Can I ask you a favor? Could you make me 2 copies?
Yes, wait a minute.
Can you mute the line, please?
I think they're calling user 10.
User 10, if you could mute your line.
Sorry, I'll
Okay.
So, could you repeat your question now?
Certainly. To add houses to the list after the 30 June timeline, what is the process, or can you add a house to
to the list?
Oh, yeah, the list won't even exist until June 30th. So there will be an application process. That means that we have to, this is the bureaucratic side of things, we have to get rules approved by the legislature. The rules include the application. So that's why I gave you those various resources, including this Google group, that as soon as we have the approval, we'll get it out there so people can do the application. It's a very simple application. It's like a one-page thing. You send that back into the state, and we'll put you on the list.
So that's a forever updating list.
Oh, it's a forever updating thing, absolutely.
Thank you. And actually, one of the things that just occurred to me, so for homes that are initially certified this year in 2019, there will be a 2-year certification for the first time a location is certified. So that's very important. So you wouldn't have to recertify again until 2021.
Hi, I'm Michelle. My question is actually, for the certification process, did we decide on if there's more than one house, how that's gonna happen? So I'm from Rise Above, and I know I'm on a subcommittee, and we were discussing how we're gonna do that for certification.
That's the certification.
Kathleen, can you speak to that?
I can. Yes, we have a policy. Just hang on a second. Let's get the mic to you so the people online can hear the other possible. We do have a policy for organizations that own more than one home. Within the next month, the entire package will go to the NH Core board for final approval. And you should have that via email. You should have the policy.
I just want to know if we made a final decision on it.
We're still gathering input from people, but what we're trying to do is eliminate as many barriers as possible. So we're trying to make it as easy as possible for people who own more than one home. And why it's necessary to have sort of so there'll be certification and then like sub-certification for the additional homes. And why it's important to have certification for the main home and then sub-certifications is because there's no way of telling how many homes we certify, and then they acquire a second property. So we have to have a policy in place that somehow accommodates growing organizations. But you should have the draft.
No, I didn't do that. I just wanted to make sure we were still going that way, and if we had to apply for each house or how we were gonna do that.
So there'll be an application. We're not calling it an application. We're actually calling it a portfolio. So that at the end of the certification process, you have this whole book that belongs to you. It has everything anybody might want to know about your recovery home in it, and you can use it for all sorts of purposes. And then it will be your choice. You can certify a second home from scratch, or you can do a sub-certification that refers back to the original property. We are going to ask with a sub-certification that anything that's different be included as a new document. So if there's a men's home and there's a woman's home and the policies between the two are different, we're going to ask you to provide the material that's different. If something's not different, we just ask you to cross-reference to the primary property. But again, your choice. If you want to certify each home individually, you can do that.
No, one portfolio works for me.
Other questions for our presenter?
What is going to be the correlation between the certified homes and the state's list?
I don't know if Lindy wants to.
I'll just say, as I said earlier, there's a limit to what we can do because of the law. So we will have to list houses whether they're certified or not. As houses become certified, we would ask you to get in touch with us, and we will update the list to say this is a NAR certified house. So that will just give more information to the public looking at the list. Also, we will refer people to the NH Core website, which will have a running list of certified houses as is that correct? As houses get
It will
certified?
be optional. We're still in a situation in New Hampshire where there are homes that don't want to come out of the shadows, they're being shut down by municipalities. So it's gonna be optional whether you're listed or not.
Yeah,
So again, so there's the answer. We'll refer to the NH Core website for people who want to go public. Similarly, on our list, we would need you to contact us and tell us that you have become certified. So if somebody doesn't want that made public, it won't be on that list. It'll be at your request. So that's the combination. I would say that, as we move forward, part of the problem here is that the list goes live right about within weeks of when NH Core is going to start certifying, and they're not going to be able, you heard what it entails. So they're not going to have 30 houses certified within a month. It's going to take time. So, as more houses become certified, as NH Core streamlines their process, and that becomes something that people aren't on a long waiting list for, or whatever, however that's going to work, we will try to give much more weight to certified housing. But because we're in this kind of beginning stage, as I said when I started, it's going to remain messy for a little while.
Is there any chance that once the state is acknowledging the certified houses, that Medicaid may become able to pay the first month move-in fee kind of thing?
I think that's unlikely. I'm not a Medicaid expert, but in order for Medicaid to pay something, it has to be in their rules. As far as I know, I'm looking at other people who might know. As far as I know, it's not in the Medicaid rules, and getting a new Medicaid benefit is a multi-year process. So I would say it's highly unlikely, which is why we're looking to some other resources for that very, to get people paid for initial move-in.
Can we ask Dave if any other states are doing anything,
Medicaid-wise?
not Medicaid-wise, but just to alleviate that?
California.
Sure. First of all, to Medicaid, here in California, and it was a multi-year process. California asked for and received an 1115 waiver, which permitted them to add certain things to their Medicaid program that isn't in the standard menu of services, and one of them was recovery housing. So their LA County is the one I know the best. It's county by county here. They're actually using it, but you can't use Medicaid money to pay for the housing, so you're right back to the same problem. You've got to find another source of funding for that. Indiana is aggressively expanding a program that was originally designed for reentry populations to address some of the needs of a larger population of substance use disorders for a voucher system, which is what LA County is using for Medicaid clients who are assessed as needing recovery housing. So it's the individual receives a voucher. They can use it with a certified home under certain terms and conditions. Typically, it's very time limited. And Rhode Island is paying for a lot of capacity right now for general populations on a voucher basis.
And Dave,
those are the three.
How many beds in LA County?
Yeah.
800?
Yeah, it's about 800 beds. Now, remember, we're a population of 10 million people, but yeah, it's about 800 beds, and they're using, I'm guessing they're using a large block grant that's braided into Medicaid funding, and then there was some funding they used to fund their Medicaid program that could pay for the housing, but it was limited. There's only so much of it they could divert for this benefit. But 800 beds is pretty significant, and they're having really good results with it.
10 million people and we're 1.3.
Yeah,
so.
that would cover most of the state of New Hampshire.
there any other questions in the room? Or announcements, or?
I just didn't want to have my back to anybody. Good morning. My name is Paul Parisi, and I'm the New Hampshire State Fire Marshal. And I've only been there for about 8 months, but it seems as if the entire 8 months we've been working very hard on the recovery housing issue. As Christine and Kathleen and Andrew can attest, we've been working very closely with them to try to resolve what appears to be a problem between what the New Hampshire State Fire Code lists as a rooming and lodging house and what a recovery house is. I've read enough case studies now and court cases to realize that if a court case in New Hampshire goes to court, it would likely fall on the side of a recovery house, which is good, but we'd prefer it not go that way. We'd like to have legislation that actually cleans it up so that we don't have to worry about recovery residences hiding in the shadows. Our office fully supports this effort of recovery housing. When you have over 450 people of a state of 1.3 million dying every year because of opioid addictions and other addictions, clearly we have a statewide problem, and so therefore I think we need a statewide solution. So we did have some legislation this year, House Bill 311, that unfortunately got tied up in the legislature and didn't get out. So I think that we need to look forward to this new legislative season and collectively work towards making sure that we have state law that supports recovery housing, and so that it's not in conflict with the state fire code. I also know that one of probably the most important things, and David mentioned it in his presentation, is about making sure it's affordable for not only the residents but also for you as operators. And I've met enough of you now to know that you guys aren't driving Lexuses and living and having beach houses in Myrtle Beach and that kind of thing. You're doing it because it's in your heart and your soul, and you're trying to give back to people. So, and maybe there's a stray out there that is making a lot of money. I don't know, but clearly, I know that you all aren't. So we do need to make it affordable, but as I'm sure you can tell, my job is to make sure that it's safe for everyone and that we don't end up with a multi-fatal fire in a recovery residence, because that's going to be a tragedy for everybody. So the struggle that we have, or I guess the challenge that we have, is finding that balance between what is affordable but what also makes sense from a life safety perspective. Right now, if you were classified as a rooming and lodging house, so in other words, if you had what the life safety code currently says is a family plus 3 outsiders, so typically if you had more than 4 people in a house and you're renting rooms to them, it would be considered a rooming and lodging house, and it would require a fire sprinkler system. And again, we know that to some extent that is a barrier, because it could make it unaffordable, or it could be the thing that pushes someone over the edge to the point where they can't make that work. So again, we recognize that, and we also recognize that the reason the Life Safety Code talks about that is because if I'm living in room A and you're living in room B and we don't know each other and we have locks on our doors and we don't see each other other than in passing, when there's a fire, it's likely I'm not going to know who's in room B or if anybody's in room B, nor am I really going to have that much of an attachment to that person in room B, and therefore I'm not necessarily going to be all that worried about getting that person out in the case of a fire. When you live as a family, or the social model that, as Dave and Andrew and everybody has been talking about, it makes it much more likely that people are going to know where each other, the whereabouts of each other, and care about them enough to get them out under fire conditions. So, again, we're using that as part of our justification and, to balance that against the sprinkler system. And as we work through that process, we'd certainly ask for your support, for your patience, and we're going to work with DHHS, and perhaps we'll be able to come forward this year with some legislation to not only address the fire code issue, but also address the certification, address the complaint issue, give DHHS either authority to follow up on complaints or give NH Core authority to follow up on complaints or somebody, so that there's teeth in the complaint process, so that the certification means something. And obviously we certainly think that if we can find funding, that's the great incentive and the carrot for you all to get certified and registered. So anyway, I just figured I'd introduce myself, let you know that we're working on it. It's been a long 8 months trying to work on it. We've had a bunch of speed bumps, but we've also, I think, crashed through some barriers pretty well, and in working together, and we're going to continue to work together to get this solved. And I'm committed to making sure we get a statewide solution to it. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now, I want to applaud that.
Hi, I'm Sean Richardson. I own and operate the Freeman House in Dover, New Hampshire. And I fear exposure. I got a lot of fear, right? This is my second NHRR, and I've been around since 2005. Bought a house in Somersworth in 2007. Not only did the neighbors come against us, the town did. And then, anyway, so I feel like a whack-a-mole every time I come. So I just rather just continue to do what I do. I love people in recovery. I help them. I got 7 beds or 8 beds for women. I got 10 beds for guys. Appreciate you speaking up. Afraid of you. Terrified. But I love the people that come through. We are a family. A would talk to me. There's no locks on the door. And family is the word that I use. It's what's in my heart. I have a program for sure, but every large family needs structure. And I guess I could use help. I feel like I'm in an AA meeting in a lot of ways, where it's like I've been through a lot when it comes to running a sober home. I'm going to continue to do it because I love the people. I'm passionate about it. Been sober for 16 years. Grateful from the bottom of my heart. And I just can't, I'm not going to leave. So if I got to rent a 1-bedroom to house 4 people, I will do that. And yeah, I'm looking at properties for that. I don't know what to do. So when it comes to the NARR or NHRR, exposure, I guess, is it going to hurt? I'm listening to everything you do. I got all that. I run an amazing program. There's structure in the house. I can't go, well, I need to do that. I'm not doing that. You know what I mean? So, but I'm afraid. So there are other people that would be afraid. I guess maybe I'm speaking up for other people that have been in my situation. And how can it be a good thing? Exposure for me has not been a good thing. Signing a piece of paper and becoming part of something family-wise, beautiful. Families enjoy what we got going on. People come in, they feel like if this is home, I hug them, they welcome home. So I guess I feel like I'm a wounded soldier. So if anybody has any help in any capacity, I've been now like a one-man operation. I've got a good team of people that work with me, but we're by no means lawyers, doctors. By no means do I have anybody in the city council. And so I've been doing it for a long time. I could use help. Thanks.
Thanks, Sean.
Can I just request that, Mr. Thank you.
Let's get the mic to you.
Okay.
People couldn't hear you on the phone before.
Thank you so much for speaking up. I really appreciate that, because one of the things that we certainly have been coming across is the fear of homeowners and not wanting to come out of the shadows. And how do we address that? That's a big one. But the fear that I see in your face is also the fear and stress level of being a homeowner, just being a homeowner alone. So the best
part of being a part of something is that you have the supports, and that was why, one of the other reasons why starting this was so important to me, because the only way that I could get through all of the beginnings and all of the challenges and the things that you go through as a homeowner was to have people to talk to about it. And I'm sort of more, I don't know, in an area where I can and have a couple of other people that are close to me. But I'm doing this alone, like I'm a one-person show. I really am. I have staff, but they're peer recovery. But I am so thankful. That was really the most important thing, because I want people to know that there is fear, but the support and the reason for joining is so that you have all of those people, city council, you have lawyers, you have people that will be on your side and help you through the process of doing all of the things that you need to do. So the fear won't be there. Because we walked through fear, meeting with Fire Marshal Parisi, and he has been absolutely an amazing advocate for us. And I think that's the most important thing, is to have an open relationship with everybody and be able to, talk amongst each other and figure it out for the better of everybody.
Yeah, just to piggyback on what Christine just mentioned, it's an opportunity through NHCore to leverage relationships. I would definitely second Christine in being able to work with Marshal Parisi. He has been fantastic, and a lot of us in the recovery community, myself included, are quick to, when folks at the state level don't do something right, call them out for it. He has been doing everything right, and we've made fantastic progress over this last year. So for everyone in here, and I was in the exact same boat with Bonfire, just a ton of fear around this. And as we started to have these meetings and get everyone in the room together, it became crystal clear. We had met with Lindy last week. It became really evident that we're all shooting for the same thing, helping people. And when you get everyone in the room and start talking about that and communicating that, we have a communication issue, I would say, in New Hampshire, generally speaking, with all the different recovery support services, housing, treatment, kind of across the board. And that's something that we're working on as well. But we're at a point in history now where, 2019 is going to be the year for us, for everybody that's doing recovery housing, for folks that have kind of felt like they've been alone, and I know that feeling. I know what the sleepless nights are like. So this is going to be a fantastic year as we carry all this momentum, coming into June and starting the certification process. We're in a great place. So, and I really appreciate you sharing that, Sean.
Kelly Riley. I do have a recovery home named after my son, Richie, who did overdose and passed from addiction. I think all of us coming out and speaking, the good part about connectivity is that, like, I talk a lot with Eric, who has a couple of homes. Part of the recovery process that people are going to relapse. That is going to happen. In a perfect world, that would never happen. So if he has somebody that's had a little, just a little problem, or maybe they've, used once or twice, he'll call me and ask me if I can take him and keep him safe for the night so this kid can get back. And what we do is use the doorway. We do send them back over to Granite Pathways. And then they've got the assessment that they need. A lot of times they don't need to go back to a 28-day treatment program. So we're taking people and just keeping them safe and they get right back into their recovery rather than a long process of waiting to get into somewhere. So by being out and talking about what we do, it's had a good connect, we're all getting connected as to where everyone else is and how we can help each other. So a lot of times I'll refer, say, somebody's calling me, why don't you try Christine? So I just think that, the more open we are about what it is we actually do, the better results that we're going to have.
Thank you, Kelly. We have about 5 minutes left.
Bradford again. Is there any one location in the state or within your organization where someone can go and find information or database on the legality within the towns of getting a recovery home? Part of the fear is of being known. Now the town knows they're going to come after you. you have that joint DOG and HUD.
Yep.
You know, but is that your get out of free slam down
No.
with the town on your zoning laws, this, that, and the other?
No, it's not.
Where do we go to get that?
So that's a great question, Brad. Actually, the NH Core webpage, nhcore.com, has a fantastic library for recovery housing, case law, a whole bunch of great stuff. And it's not just about lawsuits, but so that you can be fully informed as an operator. And also leverage NH Core. Get your membership into NH Core and come chat with us. The knowledge base that I've found within the organization in collective membership is fantastic. In terms of subject matter expertise, you're going to have a very difficult time finding a group outside of NH Core that has just the collective knowledge to get this done. A lot of things are applicable and kind of be cut and pasted into other areas. Some stuff is very municipality specific, but that's where I would start. And then, come to the meeting and chat with us. And again, we want to work to get good quality housing out there for people. It's not just, hey, we have houses, how do we protect it? It's like, no, how do we make this better, open the marketplace up, and really, help folks who need it most get the best bang for the buck with good recovery housing. Thank you. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Eric Labarge. I'm the owner of Starting Point, Civil Living for Men. I just want to bring up the fact that, actually, I can answer your question. I can also let you know that I do sit on the NH Core subcommittee, and recently I did have an issue. I have three homes. One of them is a smaller home that I first started off with, that I first lived in myself with my guys, like you were saying. And I did have an issue with the local fire department. There was an issue that I corrected before the incident happened. I went down and spoke with the lieutenant who had the complaint, who was saying basically he's going to slap, stick on the door saying we have to shut down. Because of my interactions with Mr. Parisi on the board, I did call his office. Somebody from his office came out that day, did a walkthrough of my house, realized that it was safe, that we did correct the issue. But what had happened was I was already in the process of transferring my house to another house. What had happened is the property wasn't ready yet, so it kind of stuck us in a limbo. We were given 30 days recently. More complications happen, as we all know. Closing on the house isn't always quick and easy. And Mr. Parisi has helped me along that way. We've sent him the emails along, and he's followed our situation and been very helpful. So I feel like that's important to state that, we are working on things are getting better, and the support is there. I'm not going to lie, I was afraid too. I was like, what am I going to do with 6 guys? Am I going to tell them next week, y'all have to find some place to go? Chances are they'd be dead, let's be honest, right? So I just want to say thank you. You've been very helpful. And, I want to let you guys know that, this is working. We've come a long way. Thanks.
Thanks, Eric.
Thank you, everyone, for signing in to the conversation. I think it's really helpful to have that community just be able to share their experiences and learn from that. So we are at the end of this session. I hope that you will fill out your evaluation and let us know how we did today and how we can improve for next time. And then I hope that you'll join us next time. We're meeting again July 31st and October 23rd. We'll be right here at the same location. So I'll be sending out reminders for that a couple weeks before. And I'll be active on Google Groups. So if you do get an invite to Google Groups, please accept that, and if you have any questions, reach out to Adelaide or myself on how to manage that. But it's a great way to share and communicate outside of these meetings. And thank you all for coming today. And thank you, Dave, for joining us.
If I could just make one last announcement as everybody's heading out, for any of you that are interested